A Kangaroo Fern production.
Dubai has been hit by a once-in-a-generation superstorm. Nearly 2 years' worth of rain has fallen in a single day, causing chaos on the road and on the runway.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Freeman Chronicle podcast. In this episode, we're talking about what's happening in Dubai, the flooding in Dubai. So that there's a lot of the airport was flooded, and there's also a recent study from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research about the climate change. On today's episode, we're talking to Professor Stephen Sherwood of University of New South Wales, ARC Center of Excellence for Climate Extremities, UNSW Climate Change Research Center. Please welcome to the show, Professor Stephen Sherwood. Hello, Professor. Thank you for your time.
Hi, no problem.
Okay. My first question to you is that can you give us your insight on the recent flooding events in Dubai and what were the primary cause of this flooding?
Well, it was a storm system, probably helped by moisture from the Persian Gulf that dumped a lot of rain all along the coast there, particularly around Dubai. I think these are relatively rare events, but of course they do get them.
Is that normal in Dubai? Just like, because everything's flooded, even the airport. Is that normal or because of the climate change?
Right. Well, it's hard to attach this sort of thing to climate change because this is a desert area where they occasionally get severe rains, but it's really rare. And I've been to the Middle East during rain before, and so I know from firsthand experience that they don't build things to withstand rain. They're not really, everything leaks. So it doesn't surprise me that they would have flooding. The amount of rain, if that fell in Sydney, it would be no sweat at all. But in this area, it's very unusual, and a lot of their infrastructure is probably not designed to completely cope with it.
Thank you so much for that. So there's a recent study from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research has linked this event to climate change. How this specific event fit into the larger picture of climate change and extreme weather's event?
So one thing we know from physical principles is that warmer oceans, warmer atmosphere will lead to, all other things being equal, events like that one becoming stronger, becoming heavier, the rain. We expect that, all other things being equal, the systems like that will be dumping 5 to 10% more rain now than they would have in the previous century. But, all of the things aren't equal. There's a lot of other things that can change due to climate change, and these events are very rare. And so you can say that on the one hand, but you can't really point to an event and say that happened because of climate change, because we don't even know. We don't have good records probably to say how often a really extreme event happened. The event in Dubai is the strongest they've had on record in 75 years, but the records would not be so long. And so it is hard to say how unusual that event really is.
We know that Dubai has a reputation for advanced infrastructure. How did existing infrastructure fare during the flooding? Are there areas for improvement considering future climate risks?
I'm sorry, I can't really comment on the infrastructure in Dubai too much. I commented earlier in general that actually other places I've been in the Middle East, I suspect, are not designed to withstand a lot of rain because they don't get it too often. As far as climate change is concerned, that's a concern everywhere. There's even reports here in Australia last week that new developments here are not being designed to withstand the climate that they're going to be experiencing later this century. So everywhere in the world, we need to be paying more attention to designing things in a way that will make them climate resilient.
Could this be could these floods have a cascading effect on other parts of the region? So, if so, how might this impact regional infrastructure, economies, or population?
I don't really know. I'm sorry. I don't know about the economics of that area. It doesn't look like. I mean, there was at least one fatality from that event, which is terrible. But I don't know if there's going to be any broader, long-lasting economic effects. We'll see.
Much, Professor Steve. So let's. I'm just gonna give you some information about the recent study. They said $38 trillion in damage each year. So world economy already committed to income reduction of 90% due to the climate change. And on the study, it said that the world economy is already committed to income reduction of 90% until 2050 due to the climate change. A new study published in Nature finds that these damage are 6 times larger than the mitigation costs needed to limit global warming to 2 degrees. What is your view about this?
Well, you just kind of said it. What they showed was even if we keep global warming below 2 degrees, according to the Paris target, even then, the damages from future climate change will be of order 15% of the global economy and will be 6 times bigger than what it costs to achieve that mitigation. So what that kind of tells us is, if those numbers are right, is that the more mitigation you do, the better off you are economically over time. And I suspect that even those cost estimates are probably too low, because looking at their methodology, there's things they leave out, and they talk about it in the paper, that could be making the costs a lot worse than what they say.
Thank you so much for that. So back to the Dubai flood, it will gain a global attention. How can this event be used to raise awareness about climate change and the need for action?
Well, the event in Dubai is only one of many events like this. We're constantly seeing flooding events. There was a terrible one last year in Libya that killed hundreds of people. We've had floods here in Australia. This is a worldwide phenomenon, and it's becoming more severe. And in fact, when I said that the Potsdam Institute study might be underestimating the costs, their study says that the extreme rain events are not even important compared to other things. And yet, if you look around at what's actually happening, these events are happening and they're having big economic consequences. So I think it could be worse than what they're saying.
Thank you for that. Does this event highlight the need to be increased international cooperation on climate change adaptation strategies?
I think it points to adaptation, but also the urgency to mitigate carbon emissions. We don't have to have this high emissions future. What these studies are telling us is that even aggressive mitigation is going to leave us with serious climate impacts. And so anything worse than that would be much worse. And so we have to avoid those and aim as low as we can in terms of warming, and as high as we can in terms of decarbonization of the economy.
Thank you so much for that, Professor Stephen. How can a public awareness campaign be used to educate residents about flood risks and preparedness measures?
Well, our weather forecasting agencies are doing their best to predict these things. They're not totally predictable, but the past experiences that we've had in Australia is that often when they issue a prediction, people don't always take it seriously because they think, oh, we had a flood a few years ago and it wasn't that bad. It didn't reach my house. Whereas, this event they just had in Dubai, for example, was unprecedented in the lifetime of almost anyone living there. And so you can't just use your past experience as a guide. You have to consider the possibility that a flood is going to come along that's worse than anything you've seen before. And you have to respond. People should take these sorts of warnings very seriously.
Thank you so much for that. My last question to you, Professor. What key takeaway or lesson can be learned from the Dubai floods to be better prepare other cities for similar events?
I think there's a couple lessons that we could take. One is that it's a reminder that extreme rainfall events are going to become more extreme in the future. And so everything we build needs to be designed in a way that's aware of that. And the other lesson, though, is that we really need to do everything we can to mitigate climate change. And this is going back to the Potsdam Institute study, which is telling us how expensive climate change is going to be if we don't mitigate it as much as possible.
Thank you so much, Professor Stephen Sherwood from University of New South Wales.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. This is another episode of the Freeman Chronicle podcast, and see you again next week for another episode. Thank you.